month is LGBT History Month, but not everyone knows what those letters stand for. And on the other end of the spectrum, not everyone thinks it's the best initialism to use. So today I want to go over some of the initialisms like LGBT and the confusion and controversies surrounding them. The most common one is probably LGBT, and it stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. If you listen closely, you've heard me saying that interchangeably with LGBTQ. Even though LGBT History Month doesn't include the Q, I'm in the habit of saying LGBTQ and have made it standard for the HPA to do so because of the two things that the Q can stand for, both of which I feel are very important. First, it can stand for queer, which is not strictly a pejorative or mean and offensive term to use. It has evolved into an umbrella term for various identities. If you don't identify as strictly lesbian, gay, or bisexual, or if you prefer the term queer for any other reason, adding that Q makes the initialism a little bit more inclusive. The other thing the Q can stand for is questioning. I see a lot of high school and college groups including the Q for what I assume is the same reason I wanted the HPA to, which is that at that age a lot of people are questioning, and as a support group you definitely don't want someone who hasn't quite worked out their identity yet to feel unwelcome. As an organization with a lot of young members, I felt it was important for the HPA to include the Q for questioning as well. Then there's the other initialism that tends to trip people up. The T. The T is the most forgotten letter. A lot of people don't know what it means, and a lot of people and organizations like to say that they're doing such and such for the LGBTQ community without once mentioning the T. The T stands for transgender, and unlike lesbian, gay, and bisexual, it's not a sexual orientation. It's a gender identity. So what's it doing in an initialism with a bunch of sexual orientations? Good question. While a lot of the members of the community and some of their needs and struggles do overlap, ultimately being transgender is very different from being lesbian, gay, or bisexual. And lumping transgender in with those furthers the confusion that gender identity has anything at all to do with sexual orientation. It doesn't. You can be gay and transgender, a lot of people are, but being transgender, unlike the other letters in the initialism, doesn't define who you're attracted to. Besides deciding whether to add one of the Q's or the T, the LGBTQ initialism in and of itself can be fairly controversial. For starters, it's near impossible to be inclusive. To solve this, some people include a ton of letters like LGBTQQIAA for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, and allies. Some people use terms like alphabet soup to mean that there are so many letters to represent so many different identities that it's just like alphabet soup. And some people put an asterisk after LGBT to symbolize all of the other identities not strictly represented in the LGBT. Personally, I've found one of the most inclusive and accurate initialisms to be GSM, or gender and sexual minorities. I like this one because it doesn't explicitly state any identities, so it's not leaving any of them out, but it does explicitly state gender as well as sexuality. And as an example of how there is always more to learn, I was actually told just after putting up the first video this month of a variation on GSM, which is GSRM, or gender, sexual, and romantic minorities. This is more inclusive of asexual or aromantic people, that is to say people who do not feel sexual attraction or do not feel romantic attraction or some combination of both or either of those. But even that can be a little exclusive, and actually the person who told me this joked that eventually it should evolve into GAM, for gender and attraction minorities, which I think I could definitely get behind, but unfortunately we are a long way off from that going mainstream. So with all of these letters and all of this confusion, what the heck are we supposed to say? I don't have a concrete answer to that. It can be confusing, and I am no authority on the topic. So like everything else, do your own research from multiple sources, listen to what other people have to say, and use critical thinking to form your own opinion. Don't try to tell anyone else what is right, especially if they are telling you how they identify, and don't be afraid to be corrected. Things are constantly changing as we learn more and the community grows, as people are unafraid to be themselves, and as there's more support from the community at large and from the government. What's more important than deciding which combination of letters to use is knowing what those letters stand for, and doing your best to be knowledgeable and respectful of the people behind them. Speaking of which, Julian, your ally video on Monday was fantastic. If you haven't watched it yet, go do so now. Also, if you still haven't seen it, go watch Hank Green's video explaining sex and gender in an incredibly amazing and succinct way. What I love the most about that video is that Hank spent months listening and talking to people and gathering information to be able to share to people. So in that vein, I want all of you in the comments to leave any sexuality or gender related questions that you have, things that you don't understand. Depending on response, I will either answer them in the comments or in an upcoming video. Let's learn together. And Julian, I'll see you on Tuesday.